Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Changemaker Summit and welcome to this session. Glad to have you following this session. I want to introduce myself first. I'm Binta Omar and I'm the Ashoka Fellows Director. I will be your facilitator for this session. We are really happy to have you joining this session on skills for changing future. Ashoka Fellows and the fight against youth unemployment. With our amazing speaker, we will explore creative solution and opportunity that came out with the COVID pandemic. Indeed, in the world of uncertainty, it is important to enhance youth skill so they can be ready for a changing future and transform new problem into opportunity, investing in decent job creation, however, and as well as in education and training opportunity. We will help them find their place and contribute to more prosperous and stable society. And with this, in this session, we are pleased to have like two amazing Ashoka Fellows. Unfortunately, and you are going to see that we are just all women here. Unfortunately, Daniel Deck for now is facing to some internet issue and for now is not able to join, but we have Esther Eshew, she's Ashoka Fellows, elected in 2013 from Nigeria, and she's a social worker, employability, entrepreneurship, as well as policy and strategy. She founded After School Center for Career Development, an organization that train and facilitate growth opportunity for young people, enabling them transit smoothly from school to work. Esther work experience spans through national and international organization. She's a Marame Initiative Fellow and as well Commonwealth and Africa Social Innovative Fellowship. We have also Shelley. Shelley, welcome Shelley. Shelley also is an Ashoka Fellow elected in 2019. She's from Canada. Shelley is creating a new role for youth in society by leveraging their unique ability to bridge Western and unit world views. In doing so, unit youth are empowering themselves as well as the Arctic community of which they are part to self-determine in a region with strong colonial legacy. They are also contributing to better quality research on the fastest changing region on Earth. Today we are going to talk about the solution that also are an opportunity that are available in a changing world for youth. But in this, I have my colleague Arup. She's the chat facilitator, and she's from Canada, the communication and network engagement manager, who will be the coordinator for this session. Arup, can you please go over the session flow, please?
Yes. Hi. Hello, everybody. I'm joining in from Toronto, so good morning. I work with Ashoka Canada as a network and communication manager, and today we are going to talk about very important topic, which is fight against youth unemployment and how we can actually empower our youth. But before we get that, into this important discussion, I have a little icebreaker activity for all of you. And I want to make it fun. So I have a couple of fun questions. I would really appreciate if you can actually write it in the chat box. You can see there's a live discussion going on the right of the screen. So please go ahead and write your answers. So my questions are pretty simple. I just want you guys to type your answer and send it in the chat box. My first question actually is, what would be your superpower if you had one? So think about it. You will be blessed with a superpower. What do you want for yourself? Just write that answer in the chat box and hit send. And I will see. Oh, Shelly says that she wants to time travel. That is interesting. I'm also writing this question in the chat box for your convenience.
Esther, you can come and visit.
Esther, what do you think? Oh, flying without an aeroplane. I think flying is something we all want. At least I want that superpower for myself. We have Akeem from audience and he said he would like to mind read. That's interesting too. Oh, wow. To relieve pain, to elevate suffering from people and animals. Time control. Wow. That actually is a superpower. Heart reading. Wonderful. You guys are creative. Oh, people want to mind read, most of them. Great. Moving on to my second question. What are the 3 words that you can use to define yourself? 3 words to define yourself. I think a lot of people like flying. Okay, people, what are the 3 words that you would like to use to define yourself? And I have answer from Shelly, our beautiful panelist. She says, fun, loving, and creative. Wow, those are nice words. How about you, Esther? What are those 3 words? Empathetic, okay. Pushful. Tito says doubtful. Doubtful. I like, somebody wrote feminist leader badass. Wow. You have a amazing audience here. Solar, empathetic, resilient. Wow. Travel, walk, crazy. That's interesting. Aspiring astronaut, mom, laughing. Wow, Maria. Oh, wow. That's super awesome. Okay. We all are heading to the beautiful part of the year, which is festival season. So my question is, what is the most useless thing that you have in your home and you should totally get rid of it during this time? The most useless thing that you have in your home. Come on, everybody, think about it. I know for me, it's the phone charger, the old chargers, because now we have new phones, new technology. I don't know why I'm still keeping some of those old chargers.
I don't really have much because everything in the Arctic has to be shipped up. So we put a lot of very careful thought into all of our stockpile of things.
Okay, that's interesting to know. Shelley's house is the most useful place on earth.
I do.
Okay, TV. Oh, wow. Somebody wrote TV in their answer. Candy. Candy is not useless.
Candy.
Poster
That's
and
survival food.
I know, right? I would any day come to your place and get those candies from you. Radio, broken computer, posters. Wonderful. And before we dive into this important discussion, my last question is, what are your expectations from today's session? You can write it in 1 word, or you can send us an emoji. Your expectations from today's session. You can send your expectations using 1 word or an emoji. to get inspired. Wonderful, Carmen. I think I'm going to send a heart emoji because I know I'm going to have fun and I'm looking forward to this amazing session with this amazing panel. Great. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating in this session. And before I hand over the mic to our moderator, Binta, I want to remind you all, please post your questions for the panelists in the chat box. I'll be here managing those questions and I'll share those questions with our moderator. Hope you enjoy the session. Over to you, Binta.
Thank you so much, Arup, for this. And this is definitely, I have no doubt that we are going to have joy and fun in this session with these two beautiful fellows. And so I want to start with Esther, because we know that youth unemployment is a key issue. However, there are many initiatives and action from government, from organization, but it is still there. And I know, just for being elected an Ashoka Fellow, can you share a bit about your innovation? And I'm sure that people here will be really happy to hear what are the solutions that you are proposing to overcome this challenge in Nigeria and also in Africa.
Thank you so much, Binta. Thank you for having me, and thanks to Ashoka as well for having me in this session. So 7 years ago, we actually set out to solve a major problem that we used to have in Nigeria, which was actually that of unemployability. Most of our young persons were unemployable, and we also had a situation where lots of young persons would come out of high school, come out of the university, having absolutely no skills, and then they also do not know what direction they should take in their lives, where they should go, how to even acquire skills. So this was why we set up After School Center for Career Development, to ensure that the skill acquisition part of the academic learning should actually be acquiring employability skills that enable you to get into the workplace, to become easier for you to get employment. And that's what we've done the past 7 years. It's actually been a learning curve as well for us as an organization. We've worked with different young persons, particularly two categories of young persons in transitional stages of their lives, in high school as well as from the university, undergraduates from the university. Part of our learning out of all of this is also the fact that there's also a complexity around youth unemployment, because there's the one moving part about skills development, about getting young persons to become employable, and there's also the demand side, which for Nigeria and for a lot of young persons in Africa, our population, by the way it's structured, meets the supply side. However, the demand side of the jobs or of companies that are available to employ, or foreign direct investments coming into our countries, of employment opportunities at industries, and in large organizations where you actually do have career growth opportunities and ladders to grow, was also another factor that that we had to grapple with and literally learn. And then there's also the third factor about the macroeconomics at the country level, and also, of course, the big one, the political stability of countries, and also the attractiveness formula of each country to foreign direct investment, and then also the case of strong institutions, right? So it's really been as much as we've been able to impact, it's also really been a learning curve for us. And every day, I mean, part of the things that 2020 did for us was also put all of us into the school of learning how not to, how to work online, and how to even have this type of conference that we are having online, and which is why the theme of the Ashoka, the Changemakers Summit, Rediscovering Certainty, is also very, very much in line with, with all the uncertainties and the complexities that we are dealing with in 2020. So I would say it's really been a learning curve. Actively, we are a learning organization. Actively, we as much as we give back, as much as we do the work that we do, we are very much learning through our communities, through the young persons that we work with. They are the ones constantly shaping our work, constantly shaping how we go about our work. And 2020 has also taught us that we cannot only have physical trainings anymore, and also in a situation where we also deal with complexities in Nigeria, particularly of electricity, of access to data. And then when you also work with, particularly for the type of our work, we work with young persons in really low income communities, and also the town where we live in is not like the big cities like Lagos or Abuja. It also throws an extra challenge, an extra level of challenge, about how do you cope, with being able to switch from physical trainings to online trainings, the question about access to computers, access to smartphones, access to electricity, access to data. So I think we are still learning how to cope and to change and to find ways to tweak our work.
Thank you so much, Estelle. As you said, it is the uncertainty word, and it is like reimagining everything we were doing. And I want to ask the same question to Sheikh. How did you manage? First, can you share a bit about your work, the amazing work you are doing, and also what are the barriers that you face during the COVID, and how also you made the shift to just continuing to provide the services?
Well, I'm not sure. I think I kind of want to just listen to Esther talk, but if you're going to force me as the moderator, I suppose I could. Shelley Elram o yunga kawi sakti inuit kayo mai tukangit anakuta o yunga kovia sukunga takoyana kakit. So I said to you in the Inuit language that my name is Shelley Elram, otherwise known as Tall Woman in Inuktitut. I'm only like 5'7", but I'm like huge up here. Inuit tend to be quite small people, so I am a massive giant of a woman. I work with Inuit in kind of a different way. I think the world has had enough of well-intentioned white people going into different cultures and communities and telling people what to do. So I really take my life lessons from the Inuit way, which is everybody's supposed to contribute what they're best at. And I think, as we all know, white people are damn good at talking. And so the community that I live in Pond Inlet, Nunavut, which is on the north tip of Baffin Island, we actually get cut off on Canadian weather maps. So they'll show the whole country and then we just don't exist anymore. We're 72 degrees north. So I think we're the third town from Santa Claus. In the community that I live in, I've been here for 20 years, and it became very obvious to me, having grown up in the North, I actually thought I was Inuit. Full disclosure, I am glow in the dark white. And I didn't know that till I was 7 years old. And I only found out because I was beating up children in Southern Canada, and my principal asked me why I was doing that. And I said, well, because white kids are easy to beat up. And she was kind of horrified and told me that I was white, and I ran home crying. I think that helped me to realize that humans are just humans. It's all these separate labels we slap onto things. I've been back for 20 years in Pond Inlet, and that time out of the North gave me access to things like education, understanding of political systems, understanding of decision making. And when I came back, the community here figured that was the best possible role for me, was to be able to work with youth, to take the tools that I had in my toolbox and share them with Inuit. In Nunavut, 60% of the territory is under the age of 30. It's Canada's fastest growing demographic. This is an Indigenous population. Inuit are the original Arctic scientists, and it became very clear to me that the people who know the land the best were the least likely to be able to inform decision making. There was a very obvious gap in that research was typically being done by highly paid consultants with an academic background, sort of parachuting in for 2 weeks into the North and then interviewing the people who live here, possibly, sometimes not, and then returning to their home bases and deciding what on earth was happening here. And of course, as most people know, the Arctic is the fastest changing place on Earth. We're dealing with climate change, COVID, resource development, culture and language loss, everything that you could possibly think of. And yet I'm smiling because I think this uncertainty has actually created a great deal of certainty for youth employment. We find that research is actually ticking boxes in ways that couldn't have previously been imagined. So the work that I do with a program called eCarvic has been completely created by youth, driven by youth. I'm sort of their glorified secretary as it is. And what we find is that given the uncertainty in the world, that research provides employment that is not only meaningful, but it's empowering. And it offers the youth the opportunity to bring in every aspect of themselves personally. So we're not asking Inuit youth to not be themselves. In fact, we're celebrating them. They're often told they have a foot in two worlds, sort of the modern way of being and the very traditional way of living and subsisting. And I see that as a superpower. I don't have that. I can't tell you what it's like to be walking on sea ice and depending on hunting seals to feed my family, and also be able to turn around and use a phone. I mean, the thing that youth have this remarkable ability to do is bring two ways of knowing into research. This ultimately provides better knowledge for decision making. So the employment that we're really focused on is one that empowers and also celebrates the fact that this young growing demographic of Indigenous people in Canada has skills and just amazing things to offer in terms of decision making in a changing world.
Thank you, Shelley, for sharing. And I think it is just amazing to hear this, because from our perspective here in Africa, when we think about job, we are thinking about Canada. It is like there is no youth unemployment issue. So thank you for caring about these indigenous people and also providing some support. And just Esther, you talk about the fact that how also you had to define and also adapt yourself in the pandemic crisis. But my question is, do you think that the skill also you were providing to young is still accurate when it is helping them to be really to be able to adapt themselves in the pandemic? Do they have now the skills to be in the changing future, where you have to be creative, you have to have the social entrepreneurship skills, so being able to face to any change? Do you think that it is still the case, or did you were you able also to put additional skills just to make them really being responsive to this situation?
Absolutely, Binta. So the skills that we teach are actually life skills. And of course, beyond, the technical skills, whether it's digital skills, whether it's research skills, it's actually life skills that actually take you throughout your life. And in part of our training, one of the key sessions that we teach is actually decision-making skills. And it takes a full day to teach decision-making, because we believe that all through our lives as human beings, the one responsibility that you'd have, particularly when you are post 18, which in Nigeria is the legal age where you're allowed to vote, where you can drive, where you can make certain, decisions as an adult. 99.9% of your entire life would be about making decisions. And if you're lucky that you still have parents that are alive, that can guide you, or you have mentors, or you have, siblings and other significant other who can help you make that decision, most times in life, the decision still has to be made, by you. So the skills that we do offer are actually life skills. However, as well, one of the things that we are also aware of is the fact that the world is constantly changing. A few months ago, we all said Happy New Year and everything was normal. And then now our lives, we are all stuck behind the computer, moving from learning to doing conferences to doing everything. So a lot of things are evolving and changing. And one of the things that we do, even as an organization, and we encourage all of our alumni to do, is also to change. And it was so fulfilling for me during the pandemic a few months ago. One of our alumni actually did set up an e-mentoring session. So we run fiscal mentoring programs in my office, and she set up an e-mentoring program where she impacted over 52 young persons across Nigeria. And I was absolutely impressed. It was held on Facebook every evening, having different mentors come on board to speak with the young persons, and she paired them. So we've run mentoring programs for 7 years, and as an organization, we had always thought we wouldn't go beyond the circles of Calabar to run our mentoring programs. And here we are, an alumni, literally taking the same model and making it, available to as many young persons who, and it was a paid program, it wasn't free. So it's really, like I said, it's a learning curve. Everything is changing, the world is changing. So we are all evolving and learning as we move along. Definitely, based on the situation we find ourselves with the corona, some jobs have obviously been affected. Some sectors have obviously been badly affected, particularly travel and tourism, but certain sectors such as the food industry, as certain companies and certain production manufacturing companies are still, in production. And then also certain companies have also evolved, in the midst of this pandemic. So, but the principles of business, the principles of the workplace, the principles of the marketplace actually remains the same, of discipline, of value delivery, of producing value for your clients, of course delivering on deadlines and all of that. So the skill set is such that you can use it in whatever sector, and you can actually also relearn, because we don't teach everything, we don't know everything, but constantly in life, as we grow, as we go beyond what we were taught, as you move on in life, the informations keep changing, so we keep evolving and relearning and retooling.
Yeah, thank you, Esther. And I have just a question regarding, can you tell that, for instance, because of these new skills that the youth in Nigeria, for instance, they were able to transform the issue, the problem in the COVID into opportunity, like trade, like tourism, like climate change. Do you have just one example, for instance, of an innovative solution that came out from the youth that you are mentoring?
Most of the alumni that we train were able to start up to change their business models and move things online, particularly those that used to run training sessions, creative writing sessions. They did move that online. Generally, I would say, like, within the country, we actually saw a huge boost of e-learning and e-education. So different service providers or different people who used to run like physical trainings, particularly in the training sector and in the skills marketing sector, we had a lot of persons or a lot of organizations moving to provide services online, running creative writing sessions online, running video making sessions online, animation classes online. So we really did see that. However, there are some sectors that just didn't move with the pandemic, because even if you are, say, for example, a medical doctor and an essential worker, you can't treat somebody from the comfort of your home. You're a frontline worker, you have to be at the front line. So there are certain sectors that the pandemic did enable them, especially also using online tools that are available to us, did enable them to evolve. And there are certain sectors that really didn't evolve as well. So it's really a mixed bag. And then, of course, with the lockdown as well. So one of the sectors that really evolved was also delivery services. And in the midst of the global scarcity of face masks and gloves and all of that, one of the things that really emerged in Africa, in fact, one of the problems Africa didn't have was, and particularly for us in Nigeria, was really the scarcity of masks. We didn't have that because we had our tailors, which is a huge industry as well. swung into action, producing, face masks, not the medical face masks, but the face masks made with different materials. So we saw that literally evolve. So when other countries were really struggling with what to do, how to cope with, having PPEs in hospitals, in Africa, that was, that wasn't a problem. So we did see that type of evolution, within the fashion industry, people swinging into action. But again, some sectors really, swung into action and were able to evolve, while other sectors, were still structured as it were, because of the nature of their work.
Thank you so much, Esther. And I really like when you said that we did not face to the question of mask, because we have seen a lot of youth really start up about producing masks. Thank you. But Shirley, what about Canada and in the ecosystem where you are evolving? Can you share also how pandemic have affected also the youth in their job, but also how they turn the issue into opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when you think of a country like Canada, it is, on the surface easy to just imagine we're sort of like a smaller version of the United States, but with such a vast country that really celebrates diversity and is really learning how to celebrate the Indigenous population here, I think that, for instance, and I don't know if you can hear it, but our cargo plane just landed. So we get our weekly shipment of fresh food. I'm so excited. I'm going to go shopping after this panel. It's a different world in the Arctic. And I think that to be able to make sense of how I'm going to frame my response, I think it's important to know that a lot of the elders in the community I live in were actually born on the land. So they were born in igloos on sea ice. There are people with birth certificates that say, that they were born on the ocean, which of course was frozen at the time. But that the rate of change that people have experienced here is probably one of the most condensed type of change that has been experienced anywhere in the world. So from the 1970s, when people really still had a traditional cycle of hunting and gathering and living on the land, to being moved by the government into communities, the amount of change that has happened here over just a few short generations has been insane. I mean, going from being completely dependent on wildlife to being able to participate in a Zoom call is just, it's unbelievable. But I think with that comes an incredible ability to deal with uncertainty. So Inuit have also, like many other places in the world, dealt with major epidemics like tuberculosis. The rate of infectious diseases in the Canadian Arctic is actually most similar to places that are called third world countries. It's not typical to what you would think of as the rest of the Canadian experience. That being said, I think if I could bottle what Inuit have in terms of, and I hate to say the word resilience, because to me, resilience almost feels like someone's patting you on the head and saying, good for you for surviving. But it's this absolute glowing strength that Inuit have to understand that life is a spectrum. And sometimes you fall through the ice and die, and other times you celebrate the birth of a baby. And so for the people here, I think this is just the latest in a series of uncertainties that has allowed them to do what they do best, which is connect to family and connect to the environment. So Inuit culture is very much about two things. It's about an incredible knowledge and connection to the environment, and about social harmony. So when you look at what COVID offers on the bright side, it's allowing Inuit to actually go back to those things that they've always known. So you asked for an actual example of how that's changed our work. We're already remote. We're already isolated from the rest of the world. Until last week, Nunavut territory was one of the only places in the world that didn't have COVID. It's recently gotten into the north, unfortunately, and may be horrific in its consequences. But right now, what it's allowed Inuit to do is shut out the rest of the world and focus on what people have always done really well, which is connect to each other and figure out what you need to do to actually thrive. So in terms of my work, it's really interesting that researchers will tell you that research in the Arctic shut down during COVID-19. And that's because researchers from a southern university couldn't get here. Now, it's a fascinating thing to think that suddenly all research in the Arctic ground to a halt because there was no university trained researchers. Well, just the opposite. What it did was it allowed our youth to stop responding to everybody else's needs and to actually focus on what they thought were the most key issues. We've gone from doing a lot of on the ground research, doing environmental research mostly, to actually creating our own Inuit specific evaluation of research. So there are a lot of people that come up to the north and research the Arctic. Typically, it's what you would imagine an Arctic research is some grizzled white guy with a beard crusted in snow. We're shifting that so that people acknowledge that the original Arctic scientists are Inuit, but also to be able to create an evaluation framework that allows Inuit to decide whether or not research and research results are correct. So it's kind of an interesting thing that I think the world could learn a lot from the experience here in the Arctic about not fretting, not being vexed when uncertainty and change is upon you. It's allowed people to connect more deeply with those things that allow you to thrive. And all I can say is I'm a better human being because I get to be here and benefit from that way of knowing. On the negative side, a lot of the switch that the world has gone through has been to pivot, using that stupid word that everyone's using, pivoting, to pivot to platforms like Zoom. In a community like mine, we are on satellite-based internet, which is extremely slow and extremely expensive. So we get, on average, most households here will have 25 gigs of super slow internet, and it'll be shared by a household of 10 people. So it's just simply not possible for the youth that I work with to be able to connect and engage with people like yourselves. And that's a real barrier. We lack infrastructure, which means that in a perfect world, every human being would have the time and space to be able to self-determine their direction and how their employment will feed into them as a human being and also for the benefit of their community. Our time and space here is at my kitchen table because we just simply don't even have a place for youth to meet. So that experience through COVID has just amplified this inability for our youth to connect outwards, and that is something that we're really looking to figure out solutions to. So put it in your chat box if you've got solutions for me.
In fact, Shane, it was my second question to you was, how now do you fill out the gap? What are the infrastructure, or do you need for just to get the youth that you are working with to not be like isolated? What are what is the need actually? And who can help you?
Honestly, it's a really tricky situation because in order to build a building here, you actually have to start a year ahead to plan to get the supplies, to get them on the ship. We get one ship a year when the ice breaks up that allows the major building supplies and food to come into the community. So we get one ship a year. So you have to plan a year in advance to get your stuff onto the ship to be able to get up here in order to build something. And so the cost and the logistics of construction are just insane. And so for the most part, the infrastructure that exists is all on the goodwill of the Canadian government. And so we lack that ability to have a place that would allow youth to actually have a workspace. Because when you live in a small 2-bedroom house and there's 10 other people in your home, you don't even have that place where if you had a laptop and a good internet connection, you lack the place to work. And so our biggest barrier right now is that I have to clean my house and I have to clear off my kitchen table every time we want to have a meeting. And that's just not sustainable.
Yeah, I hope that partners that are present here hear you, and you will provide the support you need. Really, it is my best wish for you. Thank you, Shelley. And Esther, I have a question regarding, I guess there is not the same issue, or you said that you are now more and more working on online, but how do you attract, this is a question from the audience, how do you attract youth to your program? And also, can you share about how can we do to just fill the gap between the skills needed and the market, the labor market?
Okay, thank you, Binta. So I'm going to start with the first question. How do we attract young persons to our program? It's pretty simple. We put out an application, and we are well known in Calabar, and people apply. And we also have our alumni who are like our #1 evangelists, who always tell about our programs and bring people. We have parents signing up their kids, some wait-listing for some of our programs. And then the second question about bridging the skills gap. I think for me, doing what I do for the past 7 years has really shown that there is really a huge gap in our programming, particularly in the between the employability sector as well as the universities. We do have a huge gap, and that gap has to be filled by the private sector. We really need to bring in the private sector as partners into education, from the curriculum development stage to, say, for example, a product launch or a product shipment to a client. Private sector has to be involved in the whole of education, because we can't continue like the theoretical learning. We can't even as an organization, as a social enterprise, or even the universities that we have cannot fund the cost of education, especially the cost of technical educations. But the private sector, or with partnership with the private sector, or having the private sector partner up would really do make a difference, because they have the machinery, they have the needs as well. So when private sector players do come into the educational space, it would really make a difference, and it would also enable young persons to learn not just theoretical things, but actually learning by doing. It would also give these private sector organizations the opportunity to tap into the talent pool and be able to train the future staff that they would like. I know that in terms of the economics, it doesn't make sense for a lot of organizations, and then a lot of persons are afraid that a lot of organizations just run away from investing in training. However, this is the reality of where we are, and it's absolutely necessary that we have private sector players involved in education, involved in employability, because that's the only way that we can actually train and upskill the human resources that we have in our countries.
Thank you so much, Esther, for your response. And from that, I have a question for you. Is now we have seen that they are more and more interested by gig economy instead of the traditional one. How do you help them to navigate smoothly in this situation?
Okay, again, like I said before, the rules of business and the rules of the marketplace is the same. So it's basically being able to, of course, deliver on the job, deliver value to your clients, and being able to meet deadlines, to deliver, to be a person of your word, and to do, what's required. We have, over the last couple of years, seen the explosion of opportunities in the gig economy. And unlike my parents who spent 35 years in the civil service, a lot more young persons, a lot of young persons within their 10th, within a decade of their career, have been able to move into several organizations, been able to move. There's really a lot of, I wouldn't call it impatience, I would call it the passion of young persons to learn as much as possible, to be able to move in different organizations, and to be able to deliver jobs at their own convenience, to be able to deliver on target, to be able to work on different portfolio projects and be able to deliver those projects. For some HR managers, they don't find that funny. Some organizations also don't feel comfortable because, I mean, particularly for investment training costs, it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't add up, especially when you train, you know, a new employee, and then in 1 year or in 2 years they move, and then you have to re-employ and then train again, and it doesn't do well financially for the organization and also for retention of institutional knowledge. However, this is really the world where we live in. So the bottom line of what we do in my organization is to enable our young persons who, like Shelley said, we also have like infrastructural problem. We are from a small city in Nigeria, and most of the opportunities, even within the tech sector, is available in the big cities like Abuja and Lagos. So our approach is really to train our young persons to be able to join that queue of the gig economy, to be able to break down the barriers of location, which is a huge limitation, break down the barriers of infrastructure, like she said, not having a workspace, to work from, or not owning a laptop, so you have to acquire one, not having a smartphone, you have to acquire one, and also not having, for example, data as well, which is also a huge issue, access issue in the country as well. So we as much as we do the work that we do, but we also sit in between sectors, and we do understand from the HR perspective of organizations that they need stability and they need people that could work with them for a long period of time. But we also do have the flexibility, and when we do recruitments, we talk to HR managers to ensure that they are also open to the fact that you can't hold on to people for too long, because sometimes young persons just want to move, they just want to learn, they just want to. So I think it's the fine marriage between personal and organizational objective in having conversations with potential employees is a very helpful way to solve this problem. Yes, there will also still be people who, would just want to get into an organization, get training and move. But with the gig economy, we've seen different young persons acquiring skills, delivering accounting services from their home, delivering data management services, delivering different services that used to be with traditional consulting firms. Different young persons are buying different accounting tools online and being able to deliver such services. So it's something that we very much welcome and we support, because the truth is also that we have a huge population, 200 million people. And as 101 economics would tell you that you have to deal with the supply and the demand side. So if we have this huge population and 50% of the population is made up of young persons, how many companies do we have that would absorb these people? So working within the gig economy and being able to work on portfolio projects and deliver for your clients is really the one way to not just solving the skills challenge, but also solving the financing challenge, enabling young persons to make some level of income based on the job that that they do. And for some young persons who are very good, like with some of the guys at Kobo Accountant, the more jobs that you acquire, the more income you make. So it's I think it's a win-win. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Esther. And just also a transition to Shelley. As also we have noticed that they are more and more interested by the gig economy. How do you help them in this transition, knowing also the infrastructure barrier that they are facing?
Yeah, I didn't even know there was such a thing as the gig economy until Esther taught me about that. So, we're so remote. I didn't even know there was a name for this kind of stuff. When you have really crappy internet, you don't spend a lot of time learning all the new buzzwords. Actually, someone just dropped by my house and brought me some meat, which is, a very typical thing, in this time of uncertainty, everyone here is sharing. And I think that it's great timing, considering what we're talking about, is that how you are employed is also a cultural concept. and that people that hunt and fish and collect food, and here sewing is also something that's incredibly important. You will die if you don't have the proper clothing. And so that idea of employment is also something that, you know, I'm less inclined to follow sort of I guess a Western European construct of what employment means, because there are a lot of people who are fully employed 24/7 here that aren't getting paid for it. Childcare trumps everything else. It's interesting that what people call the gig economy, I think somehow also has this sort of sense of instability to it. Whereas here in the Arctic, I think for Inuit, it's actually a very culturally appropriate way to gain paid employment. For a lot of people, the idea of a permanent full-time career is not desirable. That actually detracts from you as a human being. So having paid employment that allows you to get the money you need to buy a snowmobile and hunting equipment, or to be able to buy the material need to make your kids new winter clothing, that's great. But it might stop at that point. So once you've reached your objective of buying the thing you need to become a functional human being, you can stop. So a gig economy works really well here, because a lot of the young people that I work with are extremely connected to their families. So it's very much that employment should always work around the needs of the family, and also seasonally appropriate. So this time of year, we just lost the sun on the 14th, so we won't see the sun again for 3 months. And this time of year, the ice is forming. People can't hunt and travel on the ice yet. This is a great time to be employed, because it's appropriate. It's okay. You're not taking time away from the things you need to support your family and to support yourself as a human being. So that idea of gig economy is actually desirable. And I think it works really well with the type of work that we do, which is looking at a lot of contracts and projects that have a definitive end date, that you can feel that sense of accomplishment, which also works really well here. That, you know, a 2-year project to look at impacts of shipping on marine mammals, you know, the entire process, and you can see an endpoint to it, which means you have that ability to also continue to live and to thrive as a human being. So, you know, that whole idea as well of supply and demand is fascinating to me, because we live outside of that. There is no industry in the Arctic other than resource development, and people just don't feel whole working in an industry that's extractive environmentally. And so what I think is the most fascinating thing for the work that I do is that giving youth that time and space means that they're creating their own opportunities. They're not waiting for somebody to post a job opening, that we're creating opportunities that are, I guess, feeding into that gig economy. So they're short term, they have very concrete applications to the community. They're celebrating the Indigenous knowledge, but they're also allowing you to thrive as a human being. So I think that you know, that's again that kind of thing. I wish I could bottle that and share it with the rest of the world, that the uncertainty of climate change, of COVID, of so many things actually is creating a really beautiful opportunity and space for youth.
Thank you so much, Shelly. I have myself a lot of questions here, but Arup is telling me that we have just less than 4 minutes left. Let's take a question from the audience. Someone is asking, how do you address the lack of motivation among youth to become and stay employed? Shelly and Estelle, quickly.
Actually, I don't see it as lack of motivation to stay employed. I think this is where it requires us to change our filters. There's a motivation to be employed for a certain purpose. And after that point, I think it requires me to change my mind to say that, you know, as human beings, maybe we need to change how we think about employment, that maybe permanent long-term employment isn't the goal, that if you can have employment for a certain set amount of time, it meets your needs, and then you continue to do what you need to do as a human being, is probably a lesson we could all learn. So in fact, I think I would like to be motivated that way.
Thank you. Esther?
Yeah, just to add to that, there are actually different factors that motivate someone, like Shirley said, picking up an employment. So it's not, I don't like the blanket perception that young persons are not motivated to be employed. There are different factors. It could be the fact that their own personal objective, their willingness to learn, working in a healthy environment, the remuneration, the ability to grow, the opportunities to grow. There are whole lots. So if the organization is meeting all of these needs, if there's that synergy between the personal objectives and the organizational objectives, of course young persons would stay employed. So I think it's a more internal issue to the organization as well as to the individual. So having a conversation and being able to also listen to the persons you want to employ, to ask their own objectives about picking up an employment opportunity with the organization, will actually help you to navigate and have a common goal and a common ground on these issues.
Thank you so much, Esther and Shelley, for the brilliant presentation. I wanted to conclude. I do not know if I have time or if to say that someone is saying there is no job, but there is too much to do. In just 2 or 3 words, what are the needed skills that every young should have to just navigate in the uncertainty world?
I would say 1, writing skills or communication skills generally. Please, you must know how to communicate. You must know how to communicate. The number 2, event management skills is too important. You must have it because every organization needs someone who can do that. The other thing, data management skills is absolutely important. Please, you must have data management skills. You must be able to help organizations measure their impact. And then obviously, you need to be able to be someone reliable. It's absolutely important that you're a reliable person. Every organization is always looking for a reliable person. You must be a person of integrity. These are different skills that it's a must-haves for young persons.
Shelley, you're the last to take Esther.
And I would just add to that creativity. And I think that what I see with Inuit is a long-standing tradition of exceptional adaptability. And so given, climate change and COVID and all these other things, that watching people figure out how to thrive with uncertainty is really rooted in how culturally and socially and internally you're able to deal with uncertainty. So I think it's a really great skill to have.
Thank you so much. I think that the time is over. Thank you, Arup. Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Shelley. It was really very, very productive session. Thank you also for the audience for following us and for the question. So you have heard our speakers. Shelley, she needs also donation. Ashoka needs donation. Esther needs donation. So please help us to change the world in the best way. Thank you all.